Today's video, we're gonna talk about Google Ads learning period. How long does it take for Google to figure out how to run your ads so they're actually profitable? Okay, so this is one of the most understood concepts that people do not get when they advertise on Google Ads. Now, naturally, you may say, oh, my competitor, they're advertising, looks like they've been running ads for a while. It must work. I'm gonna try to run Google Ads myself. I'm just gonna try to do what they're doing and, oh, boom, I'll be making millions as well. You try to run the ads and you say, darn, I'm not really getting any sales. How can they afford to run their ads? And the difference there is the time difference, mostly. You could be having an average approach with Google Ads, and if you advertise long enough, you'll eventually have success with it to where you're profitable. The question is how long? Of course, the better job you do setting up your campaigns, the sooner the learning process or phase is over, and you'll be profitable sooner. But even with the average setup, you can be profitable eventually if you just want to throw money at the problem. But with that said, if you have there's a lot of different factors involved in determining how long is it going to take for the learning period on something you're doing, whether a new account setup, a new campaign setup, new keyword within a campaign for it to actually be profitable, okay? And more, just for Google to get some bearings on how to actually do that for you, given that Google's run off an algorithm now, and when you advertise it or do something new, Google's got to basically vet what you're telling it to do, find out the appropriate version or way to run it. Even when you advertise on one single keyword, they're gonna split test to 1,000 different people who search for that keyword based upon what they've searched for in the past, how old they are, what's their income, and decide, ultimately what part of it should you actually have your ad show up for and which not. And that is your learning period, if you will. And so if you're stuck with your ads and you're wondering why it's taken so long to make money and why you're not making money, it really just comes down to understanding this learning period and then doing enough to set up your ad successfully enough that you can outcompete your competition, assuming you're in a market with competition or just in general, being in a market that, where there's demand and not being able to sell in a way that's not confusing. So I'm going to go through what the factors are of itself, what actually increases or decreases the learning period. So you know what you stand to expect when you do something new that is set up something new with Google Ads that you want to run. And then if you sit at the end of the video, I'll have a case study here from a bunch of different markets, how long the learning period is or was for us, given that it's a different niche and a different level of competition / different setup or situation. So and then with that, it'll give you everything you basically need to know how long you should be realistically letting the learning period to last before you say, hey, this isn't going to work at all. I'm just going to abandon ship, which most people abandon what they're doing before they give it enough time for the learning period to end. And it's, the typical market, you'll see new guy comes in, he tries it for 3 months, he quits. New guy comes in, tries it for 3 months, he quits. And 90% of people who try Google Ads, that's what happens. They don't either have the right setup, they spend 15 minutes setting up their ads and they call it good, versus our agency, we're gonna spend a couple hundred hours setting up ads, landing pages, tracking, everything, so that when it runs, it at least it's gonna for sure work. It's just a matter of getting through the learning period. Ultimately, or the people will spend the adequate time setting everything up and planning that strategy that they want to use. They don't wait long enough for it to ultimately work. And of course, you can wait too long and piss your money away that way, but 95% of people don't wait long enough. It's the opposite. They're not waiting too long and then just wasting their money because they're delusional, thinking something's going to work when it doesn't. Because practically speaking, it takes a while. And like I said before, you can actually make money with some average setup if you just give it long enough for the algorithm to find out what version of it will work for you and what won't. So getting into the factors here. So there's eight main factors that I've personally pinned down over the last 20 years of running ads on Google Ads and managing 50 different Google Ads accounts at any given time and run this agency for over a decade now. And that is Starting with the competition. That's the big one that determines the learning period, learning time it takes for a new strategy to work on Google Ads, okay? So for that matter, if you don't already know or are aware, there's, in a competitive market, 20 different advertisers advertising for your same keywords. We're talking about search ads. You can verify this by going into your Search Insights report on your Google Ads account. That'll tell you literally just how many people are rotating in and out of the top 4 ad spots on Google, or maybe top 2 or 3, because sometimes there's less than 4 ads that technically show. But when Google has 20 people wanting to advertise and there's only 4 spots maximum at the top of Google, they've got to decide who's going to show and who doesn't. So when you're marching in thinking this is going to be so easy, I'm just going to put my credit card in there and I'm going to make tons of money, and then just expecting it to work right away, that's completely delusional, because there's only going to be so many people fitting those spots, and they accept everybody as an advertiser. So for you to come in and expect you're going to take away the millions of dollars in revenue and profit from your competition just by having a credit card, coming to the game with a credit card, there has to be some barrier to entry, logically speaking. That barrier to entry is quality of the setup and then the time that you're giving the learning period to happen, if you will. Google's going to slowly test out your ads in the beginning. They're going to give you the worst portion of all the traffic that comes through. And if you actually show you're a good advertiser, they'll start giving you more of the quality traffic. And before you get the quality traffic, you're not profitable. And that's just the way that it is with Google Ads. And it could take months, if not years, to receive only the great quality traffic where all the money is. And I'm going to talk about that in detail here by the end of the video. But just know that the more competitors that you have, the longer the learning period is going to be on any new strategy you have. And if you're talking about like YouTube or display campaigns, it's the same thing. If you're going after targeting a certain website or a certain channel, the more people that want to advertise on that website or channel, the more the learning period is going to take. Given that Google can do the same thing there, they can decide if you show up for 10% of the people that visit that site, 5%, 1%, whatever, and get to where the meat of the results are for you in that situation. And of course, the quality of the competition too matters. If you have a bunch of people like, not to pick on any one industry, but I am, towing, in the towing space, where they're towing cars, pretty much everybody in that space, they're just, they're winging it. They just have a little $500 website and they throw, they don't hire anybody to set up their ads. They just do it themselves. They set up a smart campaign and they're done. There's like this level of sophistication in the competition there is almost nothing. If you actually have somebody who knows what they're doing come set up your ads, you're going to crush everybody, like easily. Whereas if you're going to get into a market like cash for gold, where you're trying to buy people's gold through the mail and send them cash, that competition in that market's huge. And more so, not a lot of competition, but super sophisticated competition, because they know whoever gets that campaign working profitably is going to make no less than $1 million a year off of that campaign. So of course the stakes are higher. They're going to spend more because the rewards are much higher. And you're going to have a really, really, really good landing page to compete in that space, because that's what the leading competition that's making all the bank has. Because they can throw $100 grand at a landing page to make sure it converts twice as good as anything else and get all the millions to themselves, which is essentially what you got. Okay, a lot of people almost faint or pass out when I say people would pay that for a landing page, but I promise you, especially in the software space, they're paying tens of thousands of dollars for a quality landing page, because that's the differentiator that gets it to work or doesn't make it work. So, the more money that's at stake, the more the competition, the more it's going to take, of course. Also to say, in terms of the competition, if you're in a market where making money is easy, as a final thing I'm going to say on this, it's going to be harder as well. There's going to be more of a learning period as a result of that, given that, like in the restoration services space, everybody wants to run campaigns there, because if you run an ad and get a call, it's like instantly guaranteed $3,000 you're going to make. Because if they call saying my basement's flooded, there's no negotiation. It's just, how soon can you get here? And you're going to get the job. And so everybody wants to advertise there, because the sophistication it takes to run that business is not even good. I could set up that business overnight, take the call, and then just call another company and say, hey, I got a job. Will you give me, $1,000 for referral fee? No? Okay, I'm gonna call the next guy then. And then just do, and that would be the whole freaking business right there already. Versus you're in a market where, like with cosmetics, where you have to get the customer and then hope that you can sell at least 3 more things to them over the next 2 years to get your money back. It's a different ball game. There's very few people that want to get into doing that because it takes a lot of work to be able to have a funnel that will work versus the guy who just has to get the guy to call and you're done. Okay, that also obviously affects things. The easier it is to make money, that is, the easier to do what you're doing is, the more the learning period is going to be because the competition's more. In our space, in the PPC management space, anybody can say they can manage PPC. So of course, running ads in our space is going to be hard because anybody that has air in their lungs can say they're a PPC company versus, doing, home elevator installation where there's only so many people in the local market that even knows how the hell to do that. And then at that point in time, and you can't sub it out because anybody who does do it doesn't need your damn work. Now it's going to be a whole different ballgame. Age of account, okay? The age of the account matters so much. And I put these two, competition and age of the account, at the very top of the list because they matter the most. We've had situations where, we had a toner business, selling printer toner. Account was running for 10 years, works great, makes lots and lots and lots of money. Took the same setup, put it into a new account, tried to run that new account. The results on that account were 5% of the sales than what the old account had with all 10 years of data and age in it with it. That's how much of a difference it makes when you're starting out compared to the guys that you're competing against that have been advertising for a long, long time. And that's why they're able to make it work. So if you're not going to get into it knowing that, hey, it might take a while, but that's fine. I'm going to do this as if my life depends on it versus I wonder when it's going to work. I need the money to pay for the ads. And if I can't get the money to pay for the ads, I'm out of business. Oh my God. And then just wait, which is the people that 90% of people who fail, that's what they're doing. They don't have enough money to actually weather what they need to weather to go through the learning period at the beginning to actually get to the other side of profitability. You got to be able to invest what you can afford to lose up front. If you could afford $1,000 a month and if that disappeared for the next 10 years, your business would not go under, that's what you throw at it because it may be 6 months, it might be 12 months for your ads to be profitable after all your expenses are concerned. But, which is still worth it because for the next 9 years straight, you're going to be making money from it. You're going to have 100x return on your initial investment, but people don't think long-term. They think, I've put $3,000 into this so far. I've gotten only $100 worth of sales. And then they just end up giving up. And then the people who understand this is a long game are laughing all the way to the bank at the same time. The age of the account itself is important in that if you're going to do a new campaign or a new keyword and you've been a good advertiser, Google is going to assume your new campaign or keyword is going to do better than a new account with no history. They take your previous advertising history and assume certain things about what you're doing. And it can work against you, which is why you don't want to do any half-ass, half-brain shit because that's going to work against your account quality score. And when you do something new that is serious, they're going to have a longer learning period for you as a result of this. They're going to be extra cautious on what they're going to do with you at the beginning, giving you a smaller slice of the quality traffic, which you need to be profitable and for longer. Age of campaign. The age of the campaign obviously matters if you're talking about putting a new keyword into a campaign. If the campaign's been running any longer, that new keyword will work sooner. Pretty simple. Status or history of the tracking. If the tracking you have sucks, your results are going to suck. It's ultimately not optional to do quality tracking with Google Ads in a competitive market anymore and make money. Okay? So, and then if your tracking's been running and then it breaks for a while, then you turn it back on and then it breaks for a while, same thing. Okay? You got to be ultra on it now. You got to be able to have the best tracking and you got to have someone to pay to maintain it and make sure if it breaks, it's fixed as soon as freaking possible and have audit systems in place to know if it's not only just broken so that you get no conversions, but if it's only counting 80% of the conversions, you're on it and you know that happened, which you can do with backup goals and comparing your backup goals to the primary goals that you have. I've talked about that in other videos, but ultimately, the more data that you've racked up in your account over time, which is linked to age of account too, by the way, ultimately the sooner that you're going to get results, because Google's going to look at all the customers you ever had or all the leads you've ever had versus all the people who never bought, and they're going to compare the data sets together because they have thousands of different data points on each of their users. They know more about you than you know about yourself. And they could compare that to the people who buy versus don't buy. And then, so when you launch something new, they're going to take what they know already about your other campaigns to apply it to this campaign here, if you will. All right. That's why it's going to be a longer learning period with an account that's been running a long time. And then similar to that, when the tracking's been working correctly the whole time, B2B or B2C. If you're in a B2B market, it takes longer. There's longer learning periods involved. Why is that? That is selling to businesses. Why is that? Because there's a more of a variance in the actual leads that you get. That is, if you are generating leads for people that want their broken toilet fixed, yeah, there's different people, there's different sized jobs you'll get, there's different people calling with different levels of urgency, yes. But the variance there is less than with somebody who's looking to outsource their CFO services, get an outsourced CFO working for their company. In that situation, there's a huge amount of difference in the leads that are coming in terms of, are they ready? Are they not ready? Are they tire kickers? Do they want information? Do they not? It's all over the place. What Google's got to do is it's got to get more data to look at to know how to run your ads successfully than it would with the broken toilet guys, because the grouping of people, the people are a lot more similar overall, if you will. So in the typical B2B service market, of all the traffic you can get on Google search, there's really only like 10% of it that actually has serious buyers. So when you start advertising, you're getting 90% at the beginning, which is why 90% of your leads are bullshit, and why you're getting 10% of the ROI you need to be profitable, essentially. So immediacy of need. So how soon typically does someone need the service? Going back to the broken toilet service, you pretty much know you need that right away or not. So the variance in the lead quality is a lot less in that situation, because when someone calls to get a broken toilet fixed, they're a lot similar to the other guy who called. Versus with the outsourced CFO service, again, ultimately there's people at different stages of the buying process. And this goes in with product. If you're looking to buy a new stereo system for your house, it takes a long time to figure that out, whether you're going to buy or not. Okay. So the campaigns need a lot more data to see what part of the traffic's quality and for you or not. Of course they can use that data from the other advertisers, but you're still a unique company. And so they're gonna have to figure out for your unique company, which people are the buyers. And there's a big variance there versus the person who needs somebody to paint their house. There's a big variance in those customers, but a lot less in the stereo company overall in general, if you will, because somebody who wants to paint their house painted, if they're on the site, they're probably pretty much committed to just hiring somebody at that point in time, versus on the stereo website, if you're selling stereos, a lot of those people are just never going to buy. In fact, most of those people aren't going to buy that come to your site. So there's more for the algorithm to figure out. Lead gen or e-com. Okay, lead generation in general will take longer. It'll have a longer learning period than e-commerce. Why? Because there's a big difference in one lead versus another in terms of quality and urgency and so on and so forth. Whereas with e-commerce, if you're searching for a broom, they're pretty much serious anyway. That said, that's not always the case depending on the item. But in other cases, it will certainly go the other way. There's certain markets where it will take a long, long time for an e-commerce campaign to get past the learning period, because the product is just of which that, people really need to think about it, like the stereo company. So overall, out of all the markets out there, lead gen takes longer, has a longer learning period itself, because you got to actually collect a bunch of leads, and then you got to look at all the leads, find the quality ones, and then the algorithm has to adjust. And it takes a long time to get leads for the campaign to be profitable. Whereas with the e-commerce, you got buyers coming in right away, practically speaking. But I would say that 70% of markets, that's the case, whereas 30% e-commerce is going to take longer because, it's in a market where the customer's not sure what they want, or you're selling something that's pretty expensive and they got to think about it for a while, which brings me into my final point here, which is price, okay? Particularly with e-commerce, if you're selling something over $500, it's going to be tough to get people to buy. Most of the traffic that hits your site isn't going to buy on the first visit. 90% of it won't. So you got what they call a long sales cycle window in which you got to remarket and hope the person comes back. And Google's algorithm isn't going to learn very quickly when the average person takes days/weeks/months to figure out whether they're going to buy or not. And then that lengthens the learning process itself because of that. And of course, if you're doing services, the same thing applies there as well. You're going to end up way stretching out the time the learning period lasts, going after people looking to outsource their CFO, which is an average a $25,000 deal, versus somebody that's trying to outsource their cleaning of their house, which is a $100 deal, So that also affects things. So based upon those 8 factors, you can pretty much tell how long is it going to be before you're going to be profitable with your campaign. Is your strategy going to be profitable? Your keyword going to be profitable, or what have you? And you can combine these factors. If you have high competition with a new account and you're in a B2B market, you're talking about a really long time for campaigns to work. I've got some different markets, as I talked about, like in situations where we started from scratch, to let you know just how much time it will take for the learning period to last. I will go over that. Before I do that, though, I want to go over some key takeaways from everything I just mentioned here, of which, first of all, is new accounts in a competitive market. That is where if you search, if we're talking about search ads, when you search and there's 4 ads at the top of Google consistently, when you search for relevant keywords in your market, it's going to take 6 to 12 months on top of any other factor I talked about just to get to where your campaigns are profitable and you're past the learning period itself. And you got an update in your account for Google to figure out that you're a good advertiser and what part of the market they should give you specifically, if you will. Why? Because, it's the law of reality, if you will. Anything that's worth doing in this world is not going to be easy. Google Ads can make you millions of dollars. Everybody knows what Google Ads is. If you're going to make millions of dollars, you're not going to waltz in with $500 and expect to take away what your competitors making millions from for years already. You got to be able to do more than them in terms of your usefulness of your ad, your landing page. So Google wants to promote you as an advertiser. Otherwise, they're going to give you the remnant, crappy version of the traffic in your space. But also, you have to have the patience to wait for Google to see that it works well. And there's just no getting around it. You have to spend money for the algorithm to see you're good. Then the return comes, not before that. And if you can bitch and whine and complain all you want about how that's not fair, or it shouldn't be like that, and they're taking all your money, the reality is, if it were that easy, you yourself would not want it to be the case, that it was that easy. When a new guy comes in and wants to sell it for a little bit cheaper than you, I want it to be like this and hard, so that when it works finally and past the learning period, any new guy is going to come in and say, what the freaking hell? Why the hell is this not working? And then just give up right away, so that it's all just mine. In fact, versus Google could just say, hey, I'm not taking any new advertisers, because they of course could do that. It's open for anybody to get the millions for themselves, as long as you can come to the table with more. Better ads, better landing pages. If you can do that, get past the learning period, you will make money every time. That's not a question, assuming your offer is as good as your competition's. B2B, add double the time in terms of the estimated time it takes to get past the learning period itself. B2B is the hardest to get working because lead quality, highly variable. 10% of the leads you get in B2B are the ones that you want, 90% of the ones you don't want. And it takes a lot of data, a lot of time to figure out how to get to the 10%. It just does. And then of course, no/bad tracking. If you have no tracking or really terrible tracking that's almost as good as nothing, expect the learning period to take 3 times longer than what it would otherwise. That's just how much tracking is key in what you're doing to make money with ads. And if you want to speed up the process and not waste so much money at the beginning, you got to get the best tracking going. That means at minimum, tracking every lead that comes in by phone and by form, and not just clicking on the phone number, actual phone calls. On top of that, tracking whether leads are qualified, piping that back into your ad account. For e-commerce, tracking your cart sales, people adding stuff to cart. In addition to that, people calling, filling out the form, asking questions. In addition to that, any calls that do not occur through the cart, you import them by offline conversion tracking so that the system gets the maximum amount of data that it needs to work with to get you past the learning period. Okay? Now, before I get into these case studies here, if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, you absolutely should, because I give you the real raw truth on this channel. Whereas all the other guys on YouTube are telling you how easy it is and how you just have to have smart campaigns with broad match keywords and you'll make money. I have no interest in doing that and collecting a crowd of people here that follow the channel that are delusional. I can't, there's nothing to be gained by that in my book. I'm not selling a course here. Not doing that. So if you want to learn from somebody who's actually in the weeds doing the work, not just talking about it, but managing 50 different accounts at one time and spending 70 hours a week to do what I'm doing, 40 of which I just spend on ad strategy, figuring out what works and doing it, and 30 working on the YouTube channel, which you're not going to find elsewhere, subscribe to this channel. Furthermore, check out my blog. If you like my channel, you'll like my blog as well. You can find that at guaranteedppc.com/blog. The blog has step-by-step instructions on how to actually make money with your ads, with screenshots, with everything you need there, the way that I do it for clients that are firm with examples. You want to check that out as well. If you have any questions about anything I'm talking about here so far, leave me a comment below. I get back to every single person who leaves me a question or comment on this channel, usually within 24 hours time. With that said, going back into the case studies now. So what we have here is a list of companies that I've worked with and the amount of time that it took for us to get to profitability with our ads. That is profitability after the cost of delivering the product or service / general overhead, the cost of the ad spend, and the cost of management fees of managing their ads on top of it to boot. Okay? And this is also assuming brand new account each time. So we took that variable out of the equation. And after assuming a $3,000 USD starting ad budget, of course, we're in the US for all of these, but brand new account, $3,000 a month ad budget, how quickly can we get to profitability after all our main expenses are considered itself? Okay, so I'm going to go through these one by one and explain why the learning period was what it was. And so you understand kind of like where you're going to fit in the broad spectrum of time of learning periods here for yourself, given that this is actually ranging from 1 month to 17 months, depending on, the factors I talked about here at the beginning. So the first one is it was a wakeboarding product where the product that was developed by the client was visually easily 10 times better than the other products on the market in terms of the packaging and the materials. Okay. Which, by the way, if you're going to get into business, don't just do a Me Too thing. That's dumb. It's so much easier, at least if you're selling product, we'll say, but even with services, of course, figure out a way to make your stuff 10 times better before you start marketing, because your marketing is just going to work right away if you do that. Versus trying to muscle your way in with a Me Too product, it's going to take a long time for it to work, and you're going to end up wasting so much money doing that. You might as well have just invested to make the product better in the beginning. I can tell you that for a fact. This product, we launched it on Google Ads within, not even 1 month, within 1 month, our campaign was profitable already by doing that. So that tells you what is possible if you got the right thing that you're selling, even with a brand new account and with some competition and with the person not really needing it right away. I mean, granted, they're going to need it soon because they're going to be wakeboarding soon, but they don't need it right now. It's not something like, there's a concert this weekend and I either got to buy the ticket now or nothing. And with the product being closer to $100, so not super cheap, but not too expensive either. So that gives you a starting point here. Next, we're going to get into industrial controller. So basically factories have machines. The machines have controller systems that control how they work. If yours breaks, you got to go online to find one. You're going to search by, usually like you're going to type in like industrial controllers for sale, or you're going to type in like the make and model of the industrial controller and try to find it online, right? So this is what we were selling here. In this particular situation, it took 3 months for our campaign to be profitable after expenses. So it took longer, mainly because there's not that much competition, some, not that much itself. Yes, a new account. The tracking was good. It was a B2B niche, but it's selling products, so it's different than services. B2B services, to be clear, pain in the ass to get to work at the beginning. But they do need the product right away because the product's broke. And the cost of the product is in the thousands of dollars. So making up for immediacy of need, the price is higher. Well, at least a little bit. That shows you, if you want to get it to work in 3 months, what type of situation you need to be in or could be in. Now, moving forward here, now we're going to get into the stuff that a lot of people think that, ultimately they are in, or they're just basically kind of in denial about Google Ads. When they get into it, they don't want to think that it's going to take 6 months plus before their campaign's profitable. They think it's like a faucet. People in the PPC management space laugh at this all the time. They think Google Ads is like, come to the table, okay, let's advertise. Boom, the money just turns on. Okay, I think we're good. John, we have enough customers now. Okay, let's show off the ads. Boom. Oh, wait, John, we need some customers again? Okay, whoop. Oh, great, customers are there. And they just think this is how it works. Which, again, if it were that easy, unless you have zero competition or very, 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 very little competition, that's not ever how it's going to work. It's just a matter of how long is the learning period going to be, period. Okay? You start getting into where it could take 6+ months if you're in a competitive market. Minimum 6 months in a very competitive market is what you can expect. We did siting installation. Okay, so this is a very competitive market. Why? Because it's not that hard to figure out how to do siting installation. No offense to anybody who does it, but I mean, come on. If I wanted to get into the siting business tomorrow, I could go find some guy from another company that does siting installation, poach him away, I'm in business, right? Like, not that complicated. The barrier to entry is too small. Not to mention, it's one of those markets, like I mentioned before, where if you get a sale, it's money like right away. And there's no complicated sales process. So people are more apt to want to advertise versus something where the sales process is really complicated. People don't, and the money that you get doesn't come for years. Like if you're doing a B2B service where you're going to be getting, like for IT management services, you get $100 a month and you're planning for them to stay for the next 4 years. And until they stay 4 years, you don't really get your money out of them. People don't want to advertise in that situation because they're impatient. They want the money now or nothing. So in the siting space, super high competition. And ultimately, it's not B2B, but there's also not very much immediacy of need. When you're trying to get in siting, yeah, you need it. That's why you're there. But you can easily delay it. You can easily just wait till next year. Okay? On top of that, the price is really high. To make a decision on it, you may know you need it, but you're ultimately, not many people just have the money in their bank account ready to be, they don't have any other place for that money. So that's also a factor. That brings up the time to profitability to 7 months in this case. Again, 7 months sounds, atrocious, but if you look at the big picture, we're making 20 grand in profit roughly a month from this campaign after the first 12 months of running this, and we're making it for the last 6 years now. Does it really matter that you spent 20 grand up front to get it working when you're making 20 grand of profit a month once it is working? People just don't like to hear that because people don't like to hear truth. They want to believe what they want to believe. Then they go and that's why they spend a little bit of time setting up their campaign and then complain later why it's not working. They want it to be simple. Google Ads is not simple. It's run off of an algorithm. Now it's quite complicated. If you are going to make it work, you're going to have to think not like everybody else, but like someone who actually cares about reality and wanting to actually get it to work no matter what it costs. Once you're into that proper mindset, you will make money. Again, it's really not hard. You just have to get past of what you want to happen and look into what is reality. Women's clothing, very, very competitive market. I mean, ridiculous competition. How many people sell women's clothing online? So instead of like even a localized basis, the sighting sellers, yes, it's very competitive, but at least we only got, 50 companies that can do it in all of Dallas. The women's clothing, we got hundreds of people now selling women's clothing. And on top of that, the competition that we have, they're loaded. You got people selling in retail. They got money coming in from other places. It's a whole different ballgame. Ridiculous competition. Okay? The immediacy of need is there, but it's not there. Of course, when somebody searches for clothes, they can either buy or not buy. Women like to go shopping and just look at shit with no intention of buying it necessarily, or not a high intention, but the price is not too high. The main thing is the competition's so super high that it took us 11 months having a account built from scratch for us to be profitable. Of course, from there though, we went on to be insanely successful over the next 5+ years with this client, but it started out really rough to the point where the client almost didn't last 11 months and wanted to go somewhere else, which I can't blame people for wanting to do that because they don't know what they don't know at the other side of this thing. That it's like, digging for gold. You could dig and dig and dig and be like, F this, I'm not doing this anymore. And one more swing of the shovel, that could be your jackpot. But you don't know that until you actually dig another shovel's worth of dirt. So that's what Google Ads is. The gold is there. Do you have the staying power and the motivation to get to where the gold is? That's why I said invest what you can afford to lose, because if you start with the mentality that I don't care if I lose this $1,000 a month for the next 50 freaking years, as long as this eventually works, you will make money. Because it eventually is going to work. But if you start out saying, oh, I think this is going to work in 30 days, and I'll pay my ad spend on day 31 with the sales that I made from the first 30 days already. You're wasting your time unless you're in a market where you have something 10 times better than the competition. Like I mentioned before, legitimately, not what you think, but what the consumer thinks, of course. So with that said, that's another example. Now, the final example here is in reference to standing tables / desks. There's desks where they're motorized and they lift up. You can actually be at your desk while standing up. This was one of these markets that was basically the longest market, or one of the longest markets that I've seen, at the very least, or the top 5, we'll say, that took the longest to be profitable. In this market, there's huge companies, manufacturers, selling their tables directly to the consumer. And they frankly don't need the campaign to be profitable up front, which is why, by the way, like in cosmetics, why it's so hard to make money, because the guys selling are huge brands. They don't need the ads to be profitable. You're going up against people that have unlimited funds for it to run at a loss even. So we're up against people who don't need to, we're not going up against other small business owners that needed to actually make money to keep the ads going, which in a lot of cases, so if you're going up against people that are making money from other sources other than Google Ads, it automatically makes it harder and makes the learning period longer because of that. People that have money coming in from other places is who we're going up against. Not only that, but everybody's trying to sell a standing desk in general. Our product was good, but when there's ultimately 50 other companies selling a standing desk on Google and the customer's only going to be able to pick one, that's hard to get done ultimately. I don't care how good your website is. It's going to take a long time. And there's only so many ways that you could sell a standing desk. Yes, you can make the product look good, but all the other products on the market don't look bad. It's not like we're going up against guys that only have a few bucks to make a good product package. These are all companies that have unlimited funds as well to make the product look good and function good. There's only so many functions it can do. It raises, it lowers, that's it. Like, how are you going to make the product 10 times better than the competition? You can't. There's just fundamentally no way to do it. So you got to come to the market going against people who have tons of money from other products that they sell already, and sell a product that is as good as them, and then they have the account with all the data. how long is it now going to take you to break into that market? Well, it took us 17 months before we were profitable. Okay. So basically a year and a half just to be where we were starting to make a profit. So everything up to there, it's money down the drain, but you start to accumulate it back. And now, once we're in it already, 24 months to 30 months, now we're actually profitable in terms of recouping the money we lost at the beginning. 18th month, we were profitable, assuming there was no loss at the beginning. But it took until 24 to 30 months before we recouped the loss on top of it. So it can take a ridiculously long time, in other words, for your ads to be profitable if you're in a market where the competition's ridiculous. And also, you're selling something expensive, a few $100. People don't usually have money on hand to buy it right away until they get paid or whatever, unless you're going after the top 20% of the income demographic, which you could do. And they really don't need it right away. They could get it now, they could get it later, they don't need it at all, really. They could just keep using the desk they have. So anyway, that goes over a plethora of different examples of markets where showing you just how much time this can take or not take, depending on your approach coming to the market with what you have, in terms of making the product or service better, / making your ads and landing pages better, which of course, in the situation where we're the citing company and it takes 7 months, we could cut that back. If, instead of taking 12 months, it could make it take easily 6 months if we have the right landing page, the right ad to make Google want to prefer us, and see that we're doing better than the competition quicker, if you will. You can also make what you're selling better in terms of the offer. And that what you're selling, making it better, doesn't always just mean make the service better. It means coming up with also potentially in a lot of cases an offer. So if you're selling citing, what can you do? Offer a 30-year warranty. Competition's not doing it. Now your offer's better. If you're selling aviation sunglasses, offer a 200% money back guarantee, guaranteed to cut glare than any other glasses that you've tried, or will double your money back. And then now you got an offer tied to the product. Didn't even have to make the product different. That now cuts down your learning period. Which is both of those situations, we've done that same exact thing that I just mentioned. The citing, aviation glasses. So you can go that route with it. The more work you put in, the less time the learning period's gonna last. Why? The fundamental reason for that is because due to how statistics work, if Google's trying to benchmark you against all your competition and everybody's converting at around 3% and you convert at 12, they're gonna realize you convert better than the competition sooner than if you only converted at 4% versus 3%, even though eventually they're gonna prefer to run your ads for all the quality traffic when you convert only a little bit better than them, but they won't realize it as long. It will take advertising longer, spending more money before they realize it, okay? If you want somebody to set it up the best possible way, I am the man to help you do this, without a question. The question is though, do you have a big enough opportunity where, after paying our agency, will you still make money? And if you're wondering about that, you can easily reach out to me. I can do, even if we can't work together on, managing your campaigns fully, you can book a call with me and I'll do a coaching call with you and let you know what you're doing. Is it likely to work? Is it not likely to work? So reach out to me at guaranteeppc.com if you're interested in any of that. Of course, we guarantee your results. That is, you don't pay any fees until we can get you a certain minimum lift in your sales. That is something that we've done for the last over a decade. We also have ad templates available. If you're in a market that we've already been in, we can sell you the winning ads, landing pages, all of it that work for your market already, of which we worked in over 100 different niches. So chances are good that we've already got the results you're looking for and can sell those results in a package that you can copy and paste into your own ad accounts and get results with. For that matter, please don't get discouraged about anything I've said here if you fit a lot of these categories here, because at the end of the day, it's all just minutia in the grand scheme of things. When you started out in business in general, you went in gleefully, glossy-eyed, thinking that it was going to be so easy. And what did you find out? It was hard. You eventually persevered through it and you figured out what you needed to do to make money. Okay? This is the same exact thing. It's harder than what you think when you start out, but once you know the process, it's not an issue anymore. You just have to get over that hump. You got to just get over the learning period. And once that's done, you never have to do it again. It's really just nothing to be worried about it at all. But I made this video to do one thing, and that is put things in a frame of reference for you so you don't give up before the learning process, the learning period is over with. If you want to talk to other people that are doing these strategies I talk about on this channel, I've got a great group that I started on Discord, just where we're talking about advertising, and you can find that link to that group in the video description. I've got a free PPC course in there just for you, just as a way of saying thank you for joining the group. But if you hop in there, I'm answering questions. You can get other guys to help you there for free, and I highly encourage you to check that out as well. Also, I'm looking for companies to invest in. If you've got a great company and you have a great product or service that's best in class, and you want the best in class advertising for it, I'm willing to invest in your company and offer our agency services for free, as well as free ad spend to get your sales going, as long as you're willing to cut our agency in on the growth and sales moving forward, and not just from the ads, but the overall growth of your company. We want to be equity partners in your business. We'll take 1 to 10% of your sales growth in your company, and we'll take your company to the stratosphere, because we know a lot about running ads, and this is all we do. And we want to attach our business to yours, make it explode, and get compensated, for that handsomely, because we're going to grow your sales so much. We've worked with several companies like this so far. We're transitioning into investing in more companies at this time, and we're looking to invest in companies like yours. Reach out to me at guaranteedppc.com if you're interested in this. But with that said, I'm going to wrap everything up with that. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. If you want to see another video, click here. It is one of my best ones.